The Alter Rebbe responded to a Jew in Yechidut. Yechidut means you go for a private audience together with a Rebbe. Now, again, just to stress, the Rebbe is not like a normal person. The Rebbe is like Moses. Moses was a totally different human being. He was a human being, but he was totally different. He was called Ish Elokim. It says that he was half God and half people. Okay, you can't worship Moses, but the idea he was totally different than everybody else in a way that's incomparable. It's not that he was just a lot smarter than everyone else. He was a lot more inspired. It was a different type of a human being. Okay, that's what every Rebbe of Chabad is. Same thing, this level of Chabad. And there's other great people now, also the same thing. There are great Rebbes. All right. The Alter Rebbe responded to an individual in Yechidut. The Jewish people are called lights. I have two knockout stories for you after we finish this. The Jewish people are called lamps. A lamp. A lamp has 3, 4 elements to it. There has to be a vessel. There has to be oil in the vessel. Then there has to be a wick. And then you light it. That's what I'm looking at. But without the flame, the whole lamp it's not serving its purpose. You can use it maybe as a doorstop or something, but it's not. When you but you have to light the flame. So the Alter Rebbe said to this person who came to him, who was a very, very talented and earnest Jew, knew the Torah, he said, you have a good lamp. You know the Torah, you do the commandments, but you have to light yourself up. You have to change yourself, that you realize that, I say that God is the boss, not you. By simply striking the stone of your animal soul, in other words, not doing what you want, not thinking what you want, not saying what you want, training yourself, taming yourself to do, say, and think what God wants. That's called striking the stone of your animal soul. A spark of fire comes out, and that lights the godly fire. Suddenly, you start enjoying doing what God wants. You don't have to force yourself anymore. You don't just enjoy it when people praise you learning Torah. You enjoy learning the Torah itself because you're doing what God wants. And you feel the godliness in the Torah. That's today. Now we'll do tomorrow. So what the Rebbe say to the person, you're great, you're wonderful, but you have to strike yourself a little bit. You have to, how do you say, get enthusiastic about the creator of the universe, about God, and less enthusiastic about yourself. Number one, let's do tomorrow. That's today. Now Shabbat. Shabbat. From my father's talks, this is the previous Rebbe speaking about, the previous Rebbe was the sixth Rebbe of Chabad. The previous Rebbe was talking about his father, the fifth Rebbe of Chabad, the Rebbe Rashab. The service of serving God, the idea of serving God according to Chassidut is a lot of different levels. Now, in Judaism, there's a thing called serving God, not just to be religious, not just to be religious, that you do things only for God, not for yourself, not for the religion, not for you do it only for God. Of course, you have to have a little bit of an idea of what God is. But there's a lot of different levels of serving God. One is the level of life, a corpse. A corpse doesn't have to have much elaboration. A corpse is a person that he does everything he's supposed to do according to the Torah, but it's without really enthusiasm. It's not, he forces himself to do, he's a good Jew, right? And exactly the opposite. Because he's not enthusiastic, it shows that he's killed his enthusiasm for the world. So he doesn't get angry, doesn't get it. So he's killed. Says, okay, that's good. You've killed your enthusiasm for the world, but you're supposed to be enthusiastic for God. And he says, so I'm not. So what? He says, that's the level of a corpse. He says, thank God there's also what's called the revival of the dead. There's the enlivening of the dead. A corpse is cold. There's nothing more cold than intellect, human intellect. When your natural intellect starts to understand God, or some godly idea, then the emotions which are concealed in this godly intellect become ignited, like we learned before, and they're moved by the pleasure within intellect. That inside of your intellect, your how do you say your awareness? That's not a good word for it. When you understanding, oh, that's a good word, understanding. Once you understand an idea, there's a certain pleasure involved in that, right? You don't know how a car works, right? And your car isn't working, and someone says to you, "Listen, you just have to, cover the carburetor a little bit with your hand, and then maybe, that'll bring." Says, "What's a carburetor? What does it mean?" So he explains to him. You have a little explanation of how the motor works. All of a sudden, I understand. Now I understand what I'm doing wrong, right? I was flooding the engine. I understand what's going. You understand. When you understand, you get a little pleasure from it. Well, the same thing is you get pleasure from understanding the Torah. But that's human pleasure. It's like understanding how your car works. But then you get pleasure of the godliness in the Torah. You feel the Torah is really godly. Then the emotions which are hidden in your intellect of understanding God are aroused by the pleasure which in the intellect, the hidden pleasure which is inside of the understanding of God. That's called the revival of the dead. That suddenly you realize that there's something more, how do you say, more motivating and more pleasurable than anything that can possibly be in the world to do what God wants. And that's why there were a lot of Jews that gave their lives for God, even very simple Jews. It's a different type of a pleasure. It's a pleasure that's not my pleasure. It's like the difference between following your conscience and now. We talked about that before, right? There's a different type of a pleasure from being honest than there is from being a successful thief. If you're a successful thief or a successful con man, or whatever, and you just cheated someone out of $1 million, you feel great. You feel really great. You stole $1 million, you have $1 million. But there's a certain pleasure that you get from being honest, which even overcomes the pleasure of making money. I got a good deal for you. You want to make $1 million? The police won't catch you 100%. Want to do it? What do you have to? You have to cheat. I'm not going to cheat. Why aren't you going to cheat? Don't be afraid. Come on, be brave. What do you be a coward? Not being a coward. I'm not a coward. I just don't want to do what's wrong. It's wrong. I'm not going to. Somebody else is going to suffer because of what I'm doing. That's business. Listen, you leave me alone. I'm doing what my God. There's a certain type of a pleasure involved in doing what's right over having regular pleasures. Other types of pleasure, being faithful to your wife, being faithful to your congregation, whatever. There's a certain type of pleasure. This is talking about that type of pleasure from following your conscience multiplied by 1,000,000. You're doing what God wants, but it's a different type of a pleasure. So that's called revival of the dead. Now you're living your life based on truth, not based on yourself. I mean, after everything, we die, right? So all the pleasures that we got are gone. But once you do it for truth, then you don't care about what happens tomorrow. You're doing something for the truth. Okay, now story. Oh, it's pretty late.